Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today, let us slow things down for a moment and step into a world that feels elegant on the surface, but far more demanding once you look closer. When we picture the 1950s, many of us imagine graceful dresses, flawless makeup, and polished smiles frozen in black and white photographs. It looks glamorous, even effortless. But behind that carefully crafted image was a daily reality built on pressure, discipline, and endurance. Tonight's story begins with a simple question: what did beauty truly cost in the 1950s? To understand that era, we need to look beyond the lipstick and hairstyles and uncover the powerful culture that shaped how women were expected to look, behave, and present themselves to the world. In the 1950s, beauty was not treated as a personal preference or a form of self-expression. It was a responsibility. For many women, especially in Western societies, looking put together was seen as a moral duty, closely tied to respectability, femininity, and social value. A woman's appearance was often interpreted as a reflection of her character, her discipline, and even her worth. If she looked polished, she was considered respectable. If she did not, she risked judgment, gossip, or exclusion. Beauty was not optional, and it was certainly not casual. It was a full-time commitment woven into everyday life. This pressure did not exist in isolation. The 1950s followed a period of global upheaval, and many societies were eager to restore a sense of order and stability. Traditional gender roles were strongly reinforced. Men were encouraged to be providers, while women were expected to be caretakers, homemakers, and symbols of calm domestic perfection. A beautiful woman was seen as proof that everything was functioning as it should. Her appearance was part of a larger social performance, one that reassured families, communities, and even nations that normal life had returned. Within this context, beauty standards became incredibly rigid. There was a right way to look, and deviation from that ideal was rarely celebrated. Magazines, advertisements, and films promoted a narrow image of femininity: smooth skin, carefully styled hair, defined lips, and a composed expression at all times. These images were not presented as fantasies, but as expectations. Women were constantly told that achieving this look was not only possible, but necessary. If perfection seemed difficult, the message was clear: try harder. Daily beauty routines reflected this mindset. They were long, repetitive, and often uncomfortable. Time spent on appearance was rarely acknowledged as labor, even though it demanded patience, skill, and physical tolerance. Early mornings and late nights were dedicated to cleansing, styling, setting, and maintaining. The goal was to appear effortless, even when the effort behind the scenes was immense. Beauty, in understanding, was something to be endured quietly. Pain and discomfort were normalized. Many women believed that if a routine was unpleasant, it must be working. Burning sensations, stiffness, and irritation were accepted as part of the process. Complaining about these experiences was discouraged, as it suggested weakness or vanity. Instead, perseverance was praised. Enduring discomfort for the sake of appearance became a subtle marker of discipline and femininity. Social comparison intensified these pressures. Beauty was not only judged privately but publicly. Women compared themselves to neighbors, co-workers, and celebrities, constantly measuring how closely they matched the ideal. Any perceived flaw could feel magnified. A small imperfection was not just cosmetic, it was emotional. Over time, this created a quiet but persistent anxiety, a feeling that one was always being observed and evaluated. Importantly, this culture was reinforced by authority figures. Advice did not only come from magazines or advertisements but also from doctors, beauty experts, and product representatives who framed their recommendations as scientific and trustworthy. When a routine or product was presented as modern or medically approved, it gained immediate credibility. This made women more willing to accept extreme practices, believing they were acting responsibly and intelligently. Trust in progress and technology played a powerful role in shaping beauty decisions. At the same time, there was little room for individuality. Trends were meant to be followed, not questioned. To stand out too much was risky, but to fall behind was worse. Many women learned to see their bodies as projects that required constant correction. Beauty was something you worked toward, never something you simply had. This mindset could quietly erode self-confidence, even as it promised empowerment through self-improvement. What makes this era especially striking is how normalized all of this was. These routines were passed down, shared among friends, and discussed casually, as if they were just another part of daily life. Young girls absorbed these expectations early, learning that adulthood would come with its own set of silent rules. Beauty culture became a cycle, repeating itself across generations with very little reflection. Yet, it is important to understand that many women also found pride in these rituals. For some, beauty routines provided structure, community, and even moments of control in a world where choices were limited. Dressing well and maintaining one's appearance could feel like an achievement, a way to assert dignity and competence. This complexity is what makes the story of 1950s beauty so fascinating. It was not simply oppressive or empowering. It was both at the same time. As we look back today, it is easy to judge these practices by modern standards. But doing so too quickly can cause us to miss the deeper lesson. The beauty culture of the 1950s shows us how strongly social expectations can shape personal behavior, especially when those expectations are presented as normal, scientific, or virtuous. It reminds us that beauty standards are not timeless truths, but social constructions that change with culture, media, and power. This story also invites us to reflect on our own time. While the tools and language may have changed, the pressure to look a certain way has not disappeared. By understanding how deeply beauty was tied to identity and duty in the past, we gain insight into the forces that still influence how we see ourselves today. So as we move forward in this story, keep that idea in mind. The 1950s were not just about unusual routines or strange products. They were about a world where beauty was a form of discipline, where looking perfect was a kind of silent labor, and where the cost of appearance was paid not only in time and effort, but in emotional weight. This is the foundation of everything that follows, and it sets the stage for the rituals, beliefs, and contradictions that defined an entire era of beauty. If beauty in the 1950s was a responsibility, then hair was its most visible proof. Hairstyles were not something women changed casually from day to day. They were long-term commitments that demanded planning, patience, and constant maintenance. A finished hairstyle was not just for a single afternoon or evening. It was meant to last for days, sometimes even a full week. Once the hair was set, everything else in daily life revolved around preserving it. In this era, hair symbolized order and control. A well-styled head of hair suggested discipline, femininity, and self-respect. Loose strands, flattened volume, or visible effort were seen as signs of carelessness. Because of this, women were expected to treat their hair almost like a fragile structure. Touching it too much, exposing it to wind, or allowing moisture to reach it was considered risky. Hair was something to be protected, not played with. Popular styles of the time required complex preparation. Volume was essential, and volume did not come naturally for most people. Hair had to be teased repeatedly, section by section, until it formed a solid base. This process alone could take hours. Once shaped, the hair was fixed in place using setting lotions and generous amounts of hairspray. The goal was stiffness and durability, not comfort. A hairstyle was successful if it stayed exactly the same no matter what the day brought. Because these styles took so long to create, they were not meant to be undone quickly. Washing hair every day was uncommon, not only because of the effort involved, but also because it would destroy the structure entirely. Instead, women planned their wash days carefully, often aligning them with weekends or specific social schedules. Between washes, hair had to be preserved at all costs. Sleep became part of the hairstyle routine. Going to bed did not mean resting freely. Women wrapped their hair in scarves, used special pillowcases, or slept in uncomfortable positions to avoid flattening their style. Some avoided turning their heads too much during the night. Comfort was secondary to maintenance. Waking up with hair intact was considered a small victory. Weather was another constant concern. Rain, humidity, and wind were enemies of styled hair. A sudden change in weather could ruin hours of work and cause deep frustration. Many women carried scarves or hats not as fashion accessories but as protective gear. Even simple activities like walking outdoors required caution and awareness. The emotional investment in these hairstyles was significant. Hair was closely tied to identity and confidence. When a style turned out well, it could lift a woman's mood and give her a sense of accomplishment. When it failed, it could affect her entire day. A bad hair day was not a minor inconvenience. It felt like a personal failure, even though the standards were unrealistic. Social pressure reinforced this commitment. Compliments often focused on how well a woman's hair was holding up, rather than how it looked naturally. Durability was praised as much as beauty. Women learned to evaluate each other not only on appearance, but on effort and endurance. Maintaining a perfect hairstyle signaled dedication and competence. Professional settings intensified these expectations. For women working outside the home, appearance was closely linked to credibility. A polished hairstyle suggested reliability and seriousness. Looking unkempt, even slightly, could be interpreted as unprofessional. This made hair maintenance feel like part of the job, even though it was unpaid and unacknowledged. Hollywood and popular media played a major role in shaping these ideals. Actresses appeared with immaculate hair in films, magazines, and advertisements, reinforcing the idea that perfection was normal and achievable. What was rarely shown was the time, discomfort, and labor behind those looks. The illusion of ease made everyday women feel that they, too, should be able to achieve the same results. There was also little room for experimentation. Hairstyles followed trends closely, and stepping outside those trends was risky. Being too modern or too outdated could attract negative attention. As a result, many women stuck to what was socially approved, even if it did not suit their personal taste or comfort. Safety came from conformity. At the same time, hairstyling offered moments of control. For women whose lives were otherwise tightly structured by expectations, managing their hair could feel like a domain where effort led to visible results. Mastering a complex style was a skill, and skill brought pride. In this way, hairstyling was both a burden and a form of quiet empowerment. Looking back, these long-term hairstyle commitments reveal how deeply beauty routines shaped daily life. Hair was not just an accessory, it was a system that dictated schedules, behaviors, and even sleep. It demanded constant attention and rewarded compliance with social approval. This idea helps us understand why beauty in the 1950s felt so consuming. Hairstyles were not about personal expression or creativity. They were about stability, presentation, and meeting expectations. By committing to these styles, women participated in a shared visual language that defined femininity for an entire generation. As we continue this journey, keep this image in mind, not just a finished hairstyle, but the invisible hours behind it. The planning, the discomfort, and the discipline all played a role. Hairstyles were long-term commitments because beauty itself was treated as a long-term obligation, one that rarely allowed rest, but promised acceptance in return. After hair, the face became the next battlefield of discipline in 1950s beauty culture. If hairstyles represented control and endurance over time, facial routines reflected an even more intimate expectation, mastery over the body itself. Among the most striking practices of the era were ice facials and cold treatments, rituals that were uncomfortable by design and praised precisely because of that discomfort. In the 1950s, the face was seen as a direct mirror of health, youth, and character. Smooth, firm skin suggested vitality and self-control, while puffiness or visible fatigue was often interpreted as neglect. Because of this, women were encouraged to take active measures to train their skin. Cold treatments fit perfectly into this mindset. They were simple, inexpensive, and harsh enough to feel effective. The idea behind ice facials was straightforward. Cold was believed to tighten the skin, shrink pores, and improve circulation. Beauty advice columns and magazines regularly recommended rubbing ice cubes directly onto the face, especially in the morning. The shock of cold water was framed as refreshing and energizing, a way to wake up both the skin and the spirit. The discomfort was not hidden. It was emphasized as proof that the routine was working. For many women, this ritual became a daily habit. Ice cubes were wrapped in cloth or held directly against the skin, moved across cheeks, forehead, and jawline until the face felt numb. The sensation was intense, especially in colder climates or early hours of the day. Yet this intensity was part of the appeal. Enduring it demonstrated commitment to beauty and self-discipline. Cold treatments were not limited to ice alone. Cold water splashes, refrigerated creams, and chilled facial tools were also popular. Some women kept their skincare products in the refrigerator to enhance the tightening effect. The goal was always the same: firmness, alertness, and control. A face that reacted strongly to cold was seen as responsive and alive. These rituals were often described using moral language. Cold water was said to be invigorating and character-building. Warmth, by contrast, was sometimes associated with laziness or indulgence. This reflected a broader cultural belief that comfort was suspicious, and that effort, even discomfort, was virtuous. Beauty routines borrowed heavily from this way of thinking. What made cold treatments especially powerful was their visibility. After an ice facial, the skin often appeared flushed and slightly tighter, at least temporarily. This immediate result reinforced belief in the method. Even if the effects were short-lived, they were visible enough to feel rewarding. In a culture that valued results, however fleeting, this mattered. The emotional side of these routines is just as important. Cold facials were often done alone, in quiet moments before the day began. These early morning rituals became private tests of willpower. Facing the shock of cold water before breakfast or makeup was a way of proving readiness for the day ahead. It was a small, personal challenge that set the tone for everything that followed. Social influence played a strong role in normalizing these practices. Advice was passed between friends, family members, and beauty experts. If someone admired another woman's skin, she might ask about her routine and hear, almost proudly, about ice and cold water. Over time, these recommendations became traditions, rarely questioned and widely accepted. Media reinforced these ideas relentlessly. Beauty articles praised cold treatments as timeless secrets, often referencing European traditions or scientific language to increase credibility. Phrases like stimulates circulation or firms the skin appeared frequently, even when evidence was vague. The authority of print gave these claims weight, making them feel reliable and modern. Cold treatments also reflected the era's limited understanding of skincare. With fewer products available and less scientific clarity, physical sensation became a stand-in for effectiveness. If something tingled, burned, or shocked the skin, it was assumed to be doing something important. Comfort was rarely a goal. Sensation was. There was also a symbolic layer to these routines. Cold represented restraint and control, qualities highly valued in women at the time. A composed face, unaffected by emotion or fatigue, was considered ideal. Cold facials promised to erase signs of stress, smoothing away anything that might reveal vulnerability. In this way, skincare was not just about appearance, but about emotional presentation. However, these practices were not always gentle. Repeated exposure to extreme cold could irritate sensitive skin, causing redness or dryness. Yet these side effects were often ignored or reframed as part of the process. Endurance once again became a badge of commitment. To stop or complain was to admit weakness. Despite this, many women genuinely believed in these rituals and found satisfaction in them. There was comfort in routine, even when the routine was harsh. Knowing exactly what to do each morning created a sense of order and predictability. In a world with limited personal autonomy, this structure could feel reassuring. Cold treatments also offered a sense of participation in modern beauty culture. They were discussed alongside new products and techniques, giving women the feeling that they were informed and proactive. Following these routines meant staying current, staying disciplined, and staying competitive in a society that measured women so closely by appearance. Looking back, ice facials and cold treatments reveal how beauty in the 1950s blurred the line between care and punishment. The skin was not simply nurtured. It was challenged. The face became something to be trained, corrected, and controlled through sensation. Discomfort was normalized, even celebrated, as long as it promised improvement. This idea deepens our understanding of the era's beauty culture. It shows that the pursuit of beauty was not only external but psychological. Women were taught to associate discipline with worth, endurance with success, and discomfort with progress. These lessons extended far beyond skincare and quietly shaped how women related to their own bodies. As we move forward, remember this pattern. Beauty rituals in the 1950s were rarely gentle. They demanded effort, tolerance, and belief. Ice facials may seem simple or even harmless today, but within their cultural context, they carried a powerful message. Beauty was something you earned through discipline, and the body was expected to obey. If cold treatments were about discipline and sensation, cold cream was about ritual and excess. In the 1950s, cold cream was not just a product. It was a cornerstone of daily life. Nearly every woman had a jar on her vanity, and its use was so common that it was rarely questioned. Cold cream represented care, cleanliness, and modern femininity, all wrapped into a thick, pale substance that promised softness and protection. At its core, cold cream was meant to cleanse and moisturize. Makeup in the 1950s was heavy and long-wearing, and removing it required more than soap and water. Cold cream offered a solution that felt luxurious and purposeful. Women were taught to massage it generously into their skin, dissolving makeup, dust, and the day itself. This process was slow and deliberate, turning cleansing into a nightly ceremony. Quantity mattered. Using too little suggested carelessness, while using plenty signaled seriousness and dedication. Faces were often completely covered in a visible layer of cream, transforming familiar features into smooth, pale masks. Mirrors reflected not beauty in that moment, but the promise of beauty later. The goal was not to look good during the process, but to believe in the result. This ritual was usually performed at night, when the public eye was gone. It marked a transition from the social self to the private self. For many women, applying cold cream was the final task of the day, done after the house was quiet. In that sense, it became a rare moment of stillness. Yet even this quiet was shaped by expectation. The routine had rules, steps, and an unspoken standard of correctness. The act of massaging the cream into the skin was emphasized heavily. Women were instructed to use upward motions, careful patterns, and consistent pressure. These movements were said to preserve youth and prevent sagging. Whether or not they worked, they reinforced the idea that aging was something to be actively fought, and that neglect would be visible and shameful. Cold cream also blurred the line between cleansing and treatment. Some women wiped it off with tissues or towels, while others left a thin layer on overnight, believing it would continue to nourish the skin as they slept. Waking up with residue on the face was normal. In fact, it was often seen as proof that the product was rich and effective. The sensory experience of cold cream was part of its appeal. Its thick texture and cool temperature felt soothing after a long day. Compared to harsher soaps, it seemed gentle and protective. This contrast made it feel safe, even when used in large amounts. The name itself suggested comfort and calm, reinforcing trust. Advertising played a major role in elevating cold cream to near-essential status. Ads often depicted elegant women applying it effortlessly, their skin flawless and glowing. The message was clear: this product was not optional. It was part of being a responsible, modern woman. Skipping it was framed as risky, almost careless. Doctors and beauty experts were frequently cited to support these claims. Cold cream was described as scientifically formulated, suitable for daily use, and approved by professionals. This medical framing gave women confidence, encouraging long-term and habitual use without skepticism. When something was presented as both gentle and scientific, it felt beyond question. Cold cream also reflected the era's limited skincare alternatives. With fewer specialized products available, one cream was expected to do everything: cleanse, moisturize, protect, and preserve youth. This all-in-one expectation placed enormous faith in a single product, turning it into a daily necessity rather than a choice. There was a social dimension to this ritual as well. Mothers taught daughters how to use cold cream, passing down habits and beliefs. Friends discussed brands and techniques, reinforcing shared standards. Over time, cold cream became part of collective knowledge, a symbol of adulthood and responsibility. Emotionally, the ritual carried weight. Applying cold cream could feel reassuring, like doing something right. It was a way to participate in a shared promise that care would be rewarded. At the same time, it subtly reinforced fear: fear of aging, fear of neglect, fear of falling behind. The nightly routine was both comforting and pressuring. The physical aftermath was not always pleasant. Towels stained with makeup, greasy pillowcases, and clogged pores were common. Yet these inconveniences were accepted as normal. Beauty was not meant to be neat behind the scenes. Messiness was hidden, endured, and cleaned up quietly. Importantly, cold cream rituals emphasized consistency over intuition. Women were encouraged to follow routines exactly, regardless of how their skin felt. Dryness, irritation, or discomfort were often dismissed as temporary or necessary. Listening to the body was less important than following instructions. Despite this, many women developed a deep attachment to their cold cream. The scent, texture, and routine became familiar and emotionally grounding. In a world filled with expectations, this nightly ritual offered something predictable. Even when it was burdensome, it was reliable. Looking back, the heavy use of cold cream reveals how beauty care in the 1950s was built on repetition and belief. The product mattered, but the ritual mattered more. It taught women that beauty required daily maintenance, patience, and trust in authority. Skincare was not about listening to oneself, but about following established rules. This idea fits neatly into the larger picture of the era. Beauty was not spontaneous or flexible. It was structured, habitual, and deeply ingrained. Cold cream was one of the clearest examples of how care and control were intertwined. It promised softness, but demanded discipline. As we move forward, keep this image in mind: a woman at night, face covered in cream, standing quietly before a mirror. In that moment, beauty was not glamorous. It was practical, repetitive, and full of hope. Cold cream was more than a cleanser. It was a symbol of how beauty in the 1950s became a daily obligation, performed faithfully in the belief that effort would one day be visible. If cold cream prepared the skin and cold treatments disciplined it, Pancake makeup completed the transformation. In the 1950s, foundation was not meant to disappear into the skin. It was meant to create a new surface altogether. Pancake makeup, thick and matte, became one of the most defining elements of the era's beauty routine. It promised perfection, uniformity, and control, turning the face into a carefully constructed image rather than a natural reflection. Pancake makeup was originally developed for film and stage, where bright lights demanded heavy coverage. Over time, it made its way into everyday life. Women were drawn to its ability to hide imperfections and create a smooth, camera-ready finish. What began as a professional product quickly became a daily necessity. Wearing it suggested seriousness about appearance and an understanding of modern beauty standards. Application was a process that required patience and precision. Pancake makeup came in solid cakes that had to be activated with water. Women dampened sponges carefully, rubbing them across the surface to create a thick paste. Too much water could ruin the consistency, while too little made the product difficult to spread. Mastering this balance was a skill learned through repetition. Once applied, the makeup formed a dense, even layer over the skin. Freckles, blemishes, and uneven tones disappeared beneath it. The result was a matte finish that resisted shine and held its shape throughout the day. This durability was highly valued. A face that stayed in place from morning to night was seen as a success. However, comfort was rarely part of the equation. Pancake makeup could feel heavy and tight, especially after hours of wear. Facial expressions were sometimes restricted, and the skin underneath could feel dry or irritated. Still, these sensations were tolerated. The appearance of control mattered more than physical ease. Color matching was another challenge. Shade ranges were limited, and many women had to adapt to tones that were not quite right. Blending into the neck and hairline required careful attention. Any visible line between makeup and skin was considered a mistake. This made application both stressful and time-consuming. Once the base was set, everything else depended on it. Blush, lipstick, and eye makeup were applied on top of this smooth canvas. The foundation determined the overall effect. A flawless base elevated the entire look, while a poorly applied one could undermine it completely. This made Pancake makeup the foundation not just of the face, but of confidence. Throughout the day, maintenance was essential. Touch-ups were common, especially around the mouth and nose where movement caused cracking or fading. Women carried sponges or compacts to preserve their look. The fear of makeup breaking down in public was real, reinforcing constant self-awareness. At night, removing Pancake makeup was an ordeal of its own. Soap and water were rarely enough. Cold cream was used generously to dissolve the thick layers, often requiring multiple rounds of wiping and cleansing. Towels stained with makeup were a familiar sight. This nightly removal reinforced the idea that beauty demanded effort at every stage, from application to cleanup. Social expectations magnified the importance of this routine. A well-made face suggested reliability, pride, and attention to detail. Showing up without proper makeup could be interpreted as laziness or disrespect, especially in professional or social settings. The face became a public statement, and Pancake makeup was its armor. Media played a powerful role in reinforcing these ideals. Magazines featured women with perfectly matte skin, free of shine or texture. The message was subtle but persistent. Real skin was something to be corrected. Natural variation was not celebrated. It was covered. Over time, this shaped how women viewed their own faces, teaching them to see flaws before features. Emotionally, pancake makeup created distance between women and their natural appearance. Looking in the mirror without it could feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. The made-up face became the real one, while the bare face felt unfinished. This dependence was rarely acknowledged, but deeply felt. Yet there was also a sense of power in this transformation. Applying pancake makeup allowed women to control how they were seen. It offered predictability in a world full of judgment. When the face looked right, everything else felt more manageable. This sense of readiness was important, even if it came at a cost. The pursuit of a perfect face through pancake makeup reflects the broader beauty culture of the 1950s. Perfection was not expected to occur naturally. It was constructed, layer by layer, through routine and repetition. The face became a project, something to be managed and maintained daily. Looking back, pancake makeup symbolizes the era's desire for uniform beauty. Texture, shine, and individuality were minimized in favor of smoothness and consistency. The goal was not to look unique, but to look correct. Beauty was about fitting into an ideal rather than expressing oneself. As we continue, keep this image in mind: a woman carefully applying a thick, matte foundation, watching her features disappear and re-emerge in a more socially acceptable form. Pancake makeup was more than a cosmetic product. It was a tool of transformation, teaching women that beauty was something you built, protected, and carried with you every day. This idea brings us closer to the heart of 1950s beauty culture. Appearance was not just about enhancement. It was about control. Pancake makeup offered certainty in an uncertain world, but it also demanded conformity. In that balance between security and sacrifice, the perfect face of the 1950s was born. If pancake makeup created the perfect canvas, red lipstick delivered the final statement. In the 1950s, lipstick was not a minor detail or a personal preference. It was a powerful symbol, one that carried social meaning far beyond color. Red lipstick, in particular, became a defining feature of femininity, confidence, and respectability. To step outside without it was often seen as incomplete, as if something essential were missing. Red lips were associated with vitality and composure. They drew attention to the face and signaled intention. A woman wearing red lipstick appeared prepared, awake, and engaged with the world. In contrast, bare lips could be interpreted as tired, careless, or even unwell. This unspoken comparison made lipstick feel less like decoration and more like obligation. Applying red lipstick was treated as a careful ritual. Precision mattered. The bold color left little room for error, and any smudge or uneven line was immediately visible. Women often used lip liner to define the shape before filling it in. Blotting with tissue, reapplying, and checking symmetry were all part of the process. This attention to detail reinforced the idea that control and neatness were essential qualities. Once applied, lipstick required constant awareness. Eating, drinking, speaking, and smiling all posed risks. Women learned to drink from cups carefully and avoid touching their mouths unnecessarily. Carrying lipstick in a purse was expected, not optional. Touch-ups were frequent, especially after meals or conversations. The presence of lipstick shaped behavior as much as appearance. Red lipstick also had emotional weight. It could transform how a woman felt about herself. A single swipe of color often brought a sense of readiness and confidence. Even on difficult days, applying lipstick could feel like reclaiming composure. In this way, lipstick became a tool for emotional regulation, helping women present calm and control regardless of how they felt inside. Social expectations reinforced its importance. Compliments often focused on lip color, and advice columns frequently emphasized the necessity of never being seen without lipstick. This message was internalized deeply. Many women felt uncomfortable answering the door, running errands, or even being seen by family members without it. The face was expected to remain presentable at all times. Media played a central role in shaping this ideal. Film stars, models, and advertisements consistently featured perfectly painted red lips. These images were presented as attainable standards, not stylized performances. The repetition made the look feel normal and essential. Over time, red lipstick became a visual shorthand for femininity itself. Color choice, while seemingly personal, was also guided by rules. Shades were selected to match skin tone, hair color, and outfit, often based on advice from magazines or sales consultants. Choosing the wrong red could be framed as a mistake, reinforcing dependence on external guidance. Even within a single color category, there was pressure to choose correctly. Lipstick also reflected the era's emphasis on presentation over comfort. Some formulas were drying or stiff, yet this was accepted as part of wearing the color well. Long-lasting wear was prioritized over ease. A lipstick that stayed in place signaled discipline and attention, even if it felt uncomfortable. There was also a moral dimension attached to lipstick. Wearing it properly suggested self-respect and maturity. Too little could seem careless. Too much could be judged as excessive. Navigating this balance required constant self-monitoring. The right amount of lipstick was another invisible rule women were expected to master. For working women, lipstick carried professional implications. A polished appearance could affect how seriously they were taken. Red lipstick helped convey authority and confidence in environments where women were often scrutinized more closely than men. In this sense, it became a form of armor, offering a layer of visual credibility. At the same time, lipstick was one of the few beauty tools that allowed for visible expression. Unlike foundation or hair, which aimed for uniformity, lipstick allowed for a hint of individuality through shade and finish. Within strict boundaries, it offered a small space for personal choice. This made it emotionally significant, even within a rigid system. The removal of lipstick at night was often symbolic. Wiping away the red color marked the end of public performance. It was a quiet moment of release, when the carefully maintained image could finally be set aside. Yet even this act was temporary, as the color would return the next day. Looking back, red lipstick reveals how beauty in the 1950s functioned as a social language. It communicated readiness, respectability, and emotional control without words. A painted mouth was not just about looking good. It was about signaling belonging and competence. This idea helps us understand why beauty rituals of the era felt so demanding. Each step carried meaning, and none were truly optional. Red lipstick, in particular, shows how a simple product could shape behavior, confidence, and identity. As we move forward, remember this image, a woman carefully checking her reflection, ensuring her lipstick is perfectly applied before stepping into the world. That small act carried enormous weight. In the 1950s, red lipstick was not just color. It was a statement, a shield, and a symbol of what it meant to be seen as a proper woman. If makeup framed the face, hair crowned it. In the 1950s, hairstyles were not casual choices, they were highly codified statements of femininity, social status, and personal discipline. Every curl, wave, and volume had meaning, and maintaining these styles required careful effort, specialized products, and sometimes hours of daily attention. The era favored structured looks, such as the soft, voluminous waves popularized by movie stars. Hair was expected to look polished, healthy, and resilient, signaling that a woman could manage both her appearance and her household. A well-kept hairstyle reflected not just beauty but responsibility, hinting at a woman's competence and adherence to social norms. Products like setting lotion, hairsprays, and cold waves were common. Women invested significant time in creating curls or waves that would last throughout the day. Hair rollers and pins were used nightly to shape the hair, often requiring assistance from family members or professional stylists. Morning routines involved careful combing, brushing, and sometimes re-curling to maintain the perfect look. Much like makeup, hair also carried emotional weight. A well-styled head could boost confidence and convey readiness to face the world. Conversely, messy or unkempt hair might signal fatigue, illness, or carelessness, affecting both personal self-esteem and social perception. The hair became a visible extension of discipline and emotional composure. Cultural pressures reinforced these standards. Magazines, television, and film consistently depicted women with flawless hairstyles, setting a standard that felt both aspirational and obligatory. Comparisons with these images created subtle social judgment. Failing to emulate the ideal could provoke criticism or internalized shame. Even short hairstyles were subject to scrutiny. The cropped, neat cuts popular among working women required precision and upkeep, demonstrating efficiency and modernity without sacrificing femininity. Every style, long or short, was judged by its alignment with societal expectations. Hair color also played a role in conveying identity. Light or dark shades were chosen to complement skin tone, enhance facial features, or fit within socially accepted norms. Unnatural hues were rare and often frowned upon, reinforcing a broader cultural preference for conformity. Accessories like hats, scarves, and hairpins were not mere decoration. They signaled fashion sense, attention to detail, and sometimes social rank. A hat could complete a look and indicate adherence to etiquette, particularly in public settings. Professional advice shaped daily habits. Beauty salons offered guidance on proper care, styling, and the latest trends, positioning stylists as gatekeepers of ideal femininity. For many women, visiting a salon was not just about pampering, it was about aligning with cultural expectations. The commitment to hair routines demonstrates how deeply beauty standards were woven into daily life. Maintaining a style required not only time and skill but also patience, resources, and ongoing effort. Hair, like makeup, became a form of silent communication, signaling readiness, discipline, and conformity. Ultimately, hairstyles in the 1950s were more than aesthetics. They were a code. They reflected personality, morality, and social belonging, influencing how women were perceived and how they perceived themselves. By understanding the importance of hair, we can see how the era's beauty rituals extended far beyond surface-level appearance, shaping behavior, emotions, and identity in subtle but profound ways. While makeup and hairstyles shaped visible impressions, scent operated on a subtler, almost invisible level. In the 1950s, perfumes were more than personal indulgences, they were social signals, communicating refinement, desirability, and attention to detail. Choosing a fragrance was a deliberate act, with each scent carrying nuanced messages about a woman's personality, status, and mood. Fragrances were marketed strategically, often alongside aspirational images of glamorous women. Advertisements suggested that the right perfume could elevate a woman's presence, making her unforgettable in social and romantic encounters. Popular scents emphasized floral, powdery, or citrus notes, evoking freshness, elegance, and sophistication. The act of applying perfume was ritualistic, reinforcing daily routines of self-care and preparation for public life. Perfume also acted as a tool of identity construction. Women often selected scents that aligned with their desired image: delicate and demure, bold and seductive, or refined and understated. These choices reflected personal tastes but also societal expectations about femininity and decorum. For example, heavier floral scents might signal maturity and elegance, whereas lighter, citrusy notes conveyed youthfulness and vitality. The use of fragrance extended beyond social signaling. It was intertwined with emotion and memory. A signature scent could evoke nostalgia, create intimacy, or even influence moods. Wearing perfume became an emotional armor, offering confidence and poise as women navigated social gatherings, work environments, and personal relationships. Cultural norms dictated when and how perfume should be applied. Light applications were preferred for daytime activities, while more potent fragrances were reserved for evenings or special occasions. Overuse could suggest vanity or lack of self-awareness, while subtle use demonstrated sophistication and restraint. This delicate balance highlighted the era's emphasis on measured, controlled self-presentation. Perfume also interacted with fashion and grooming. Coordinating a scent with an outfit or hairstyle enhanced a woman's overall aesthetic coherence, reinforcing the idea that every detail mattered in the construction of an ideal appearance. Accessory choices, such as gloves, hats, or jewelry, often complemented a fragrance, creating a harmonious sensory impression. Social occasions amplified the importance of fragrance. At parties, dances, or formal events, scent could leave lasting impressions, influencing social perception and interpersonal dynamics. A memorable fragrance might evoke curiosity, admiration, or romantic interest, subtly shaping interactions without a single word being spoken. Fragrance culture was further reinforced by media. Films, television, and magazines portrayed women whose elegance was inseparable from their scent, embedding the idea that perfume was an essential component of femininity. This created both aspiration and pressure, as women internalized the notion that their social success partly depended on olfactory appeal. Ultimately, perfumes in the 1950s were more than cosmetic products, they were tools of social negotiation. Through scent, women could communicate identity, assert presence, and navigate complex social expectations. The ritual of choosing and applying fragrance became a deeply ingrained aspect of daily life, blending aesthetics, psychology, and culture into a subtle yet powerful form of personal expression. In the 1950s, the pursuit of an idealized feminine silhouette was a central aspect of daily life for many women. Diet culture was pervasive, emphasizing extreme control over food intake, strict adherence to meal plans, and the promise of transforming one's body into the socially approved standard of beauty. A slender waist, often accentuated by girdles, was considered essential not only for attractiveness but also for demonstrating self-discipline and refinement. Breakfasts were austere affairs, frequently consisting of grapefruit, cottage cheese, or other low-calorie, low-flavor options designed to jumpstart metabolism and suppress appetite. Grapefruit, in particular, was celebrated as a fat-burning miracle, though its effectiveness was more psychological than scientific. Lunches and dinners followed rigid formulas, sometimes including salads, gelatin concoctions, or miracle diet pills, many of which contained stimulants or ingredients that modern standards would deem unsafe. These regimens required determination, patience, and, often, a willingness to endure discomfort or hunger. Cigarettes were paradoxically woven into the diet culture as appetite suppressants. Smoking, encouraged by advertising and social norms, became a tool to maintain slenderness while projecting sophistication. Women's daily routines blended diet, exercise, and lifestyle management, reflecting the era's intense focus on outward appearance and societal expectations. Media reinforced these ideals, presenting thin actresses, models, and public figures as templates of beauty. Women were encouraged to emulate these standards, often with the implicit message that failure to do so would affect social standing, marriage prospects, or personal worth. Books, magazines, and advice columns detailed strategies for portion control, reducing recipes, and tricks to appear slimmer, creating a culture of constant self-surveillance and comparison. The intersection of diet, beauty, and fashion also shaped other routines. Girdles and shapewear supported the visual illusion of slimness, while careful posture and clothing choices accentuated curves in socially approved ways. Diet culture was therefore not only about food but also about cultivating a holistic aesthetic identity. Importantly, these practices carried both psychological and physical consequences. While some women experienced temporary improvements in appearance, the relentless focus on restriction and measurement often led to stress, anxiety, and unhealthy relationships with food. The pressure to maintain a slim figure was omnipresent, influencing self-esteem, social interactions, and personal identity. Diet culture in the 1950s exemplifies the broader societal prioritization of female appearance as a marker of moral and social worth. Women were encouraged to invest time, energy, and even personal health into achieving an idealized form, reinforcing the notion that beauty was a duty, not merely a personal choice. In the 1950s, eyebrows were more than a facial feature, they were a statement of style, control, and personal discipline. The ideal brow was thin, highly arched, and meticulously shaped, a standard popularized by Hollywood icons like Greta Garbo and Jean Harlow. Natural brows, full or unruly, were often viewed as improper, rebellious, or simply unfashionable, which led women to adopt rigorous grooming routines. Every morning, women would shave or pluck their eyebrows to create a clean canvas. Then, using fine pencils in shades that matched or complemented their hair, they would redraw each arch with painstaking precision. Symmetry was crucial. A misaligned line could be disastrous, sending a woman back to the mirror to erase and start over. This meticulous process transformed the simple act of grooming into a delicate performance requiring steady hands, patience, and careful planning. Eyebrow maintenance was not limited to mornings. Women carried their pencils throughout the day, ready to correct smudges caused by wind, sweat, or unexpected mishaps. Accidental smudges could result in brows that looked uneven, exaggerated, or comically expressive, challenging women to constantly manage their image. Some even resorted to eyebrow stencils, plastic templates intended to ensure a perfectly shaped brow, but even these could produce awkward results if not used precisely. Beyond aesthetics, eyebrows served a social and psychological purpose. They framed the face, expressed emotion, and conveyed confidence. Thin, arched brows became a symbol of sophistication, self-discipline, and modern femininity. Maintaining them was a daily ritual of control in a society that demanded women regulate their appearance meticulously. The intense attention to brows reflected the era's broader beauty ethos. Every feature, no matter how small, contributed to an idealized image of womanhood. The commitment to shaping, drawing, and preserving brows was both an act of conformity to societal norms and a personal declaration of pride in one's appearance. Eyebrow grooming, in the 1950s, was therefore a microcosm of the decade's obsession with beauty as a form of discipline, art, and social currency. It exemplified the interplay between cultural standards, personal effort, and the performative nature of femininity, a practice where even the smallest details mattered enormously. In the 1950s, eye makeup was a high-stakes art form, transforming lashes into a dramatic frame for the face. Mascara was not the convenient tube and wand we know today. Instead, women often used a solid cake of mascara, applying it with a tiny brush dipped in a thick, tar-like pigment. The process was delicate and intense. A slip of the hand could smudge the entire eyelid, ruin the meticulous pencil-work brows, or even glue lashes together. There was no waterproof formula, no clump-free guarantee, just patience, precision, and practice. The act of applying mascara was almost ritualistic. Women had to lean in close to the mirror, sometimes holding their breath, to coat each lash individually. The thick formula stiffened lashes, giving them a striking, bold appearance, but it also created a fragile structure where one wrong blink could undo hours of effort. For many, this was a test of both skill and endurance, reinforcing the idea that beauty demanded sacrifice. Adding to the drama was the lash curler, a small clamp resembling a miniature torture device. It required careful pressure to curl the lashes without ripping them out, and the results were temporary, lasting only as long as one avoided blinking too vigorously or sweating. Yet, the payoff was significant: wide-eyed, perfectly framed lashes that could hold attention and convey emotion, even if the rest of the face remained expressionless under layers of foundation and powder. This focus on lashes highlighted the era's obsession with the eyes as the window to personality and allure. Bold, carefully sculpted lashes were seen as a form of empowerment, a way for women to assert confidence and command attention. The meticulous routine of mascara application and lash curling became a daily exercise in patience, control, and theatrical presentation. The 1950s eye makeup rituals reflected a larger cultural trend, the fusion of practicality, glamour, and performance. Every swipe of mascara, every careful squeeze of the curler, and every tiny adjustment reinforced the ideal that a woman's appearance was both her armor and her art. Beauty was demanding, sometimes perilous, but always dramatic, and the eyes played a starring role in this mid-century spectacle. As the final act of the 1950s beauty routine, hairspray was more than just a finishing product, it was the crowning achievement of a woman's daily preparation. After hours of curling, teasing, setting, and painting, the hair had to withstand the rigors of the day, and hairspray was both shield and sculptor. Women applied it liberally, enveloping themselves in a fragrant, chemically charged cloud that hardened styles into near-permanent perfection. The Beehive, Victory rolls, and other iconic silhouettes relied on this final layer of lacquer to maintain their architectural integrity. Application was a sensory experience in itself. The mist coated every strand, leaving hands sticky, lungs tingling, and mirrors fogged with the residue of dedication. One had to be cautious: too much, and the hair became rigid and brittle. Too little, and the hours of labor could collapse under a slight breeze. Mothers, sisters, and friends often offered advice or warnings from the doorway, a combination of guidance and intimidation, underscoring the social significance of the hairstyle. A perfectly sprayed hairdo was a symbol of personal discipline, aesthetic pride, and social status. Beyond functionality, hairspray embodied the era's fascination with permanence and control. It was not merely about beauty. It was about asserting order over the chaos of daily life. Every curl that stayed in place, every lift that defied gravity, was a small triumph against the unpredictability of the world. Women slept carefully, sometimes with silk scarves and multiple pillows, to preserve the fragile art atop their heads, treating their hair as both armor and sculpture. The pervasive use of hairspray also had cultural and sensory consequences. Homes often carried the lingering scent of chemical fixatives, a perfume of ambition and perseverance. Cats, children, and unsuspecting visitors learned to avoid the fallout zone, where tiny particles coated every surface, an invisible testament to the sacrifices made for beauty. In essence, hairspray transformed ordinary hair into an emblem of mid-century identity: bold, visible, and unwavering. By the end of the day, after lipstick had been applied with precision, lashes carefully sculpted, eyebrows penciled into submission, and the final mist of hairspray had settled, a 1950s woman could step into the world with the confidence that she had conquered both her reflection and the expectations placed upon her. The routine, elaborate and exhausting, was a testament to the era's belief that beauty was not merely aesthetic, it was discipline, performance, and social currency, all rolled into a daily ritual that shaped how women saw themselves and how society saw them. Hairspray, like every other element of the 1950s beauty regimen, was simultaneously practical and symbolic. It held styles in place, yes, but it also held a story of endurance, creativity, and a willingness to endure discomfort in the pursuit of societal ideals. And as women moved through their day, the shine of lacquered hair, the perfection of matte foundation, and the boldness of red lips communicated an unspoken message: In a world of expectations, they had mastered the art of appearance, one ritual at a time. As we reach the end of our journey through the meticulous, fascinating world of 1950s beauty rituals, it is clear that these practices were more than just about appearances. Each curl, each layer of makeup, every dab of powder and spritz of hairspray tells a story of creativity, discipline, and the societal expectations that shaped everyday life. These routines reflected both personal identity and cultural ideals, blending art, science, and social performance into a daily ritual that defined a generation. By exploring these intricate habits, we gain insight not only into fashion and beauty but also into the lives of the women who lived them, their struggles, ambitions, and the ways they navigated a world that demanded perfection in so many visible ways. It is a reminder that history often resides in the smallest details, the curl of a hair, the sweep of lipstick, the scent of powder in a morning routine. Thank you so much for joining me today and stepping back into this vivid, layered past. I hope this glimpse into 1950s beauty gives you a deeper appreciation for the artistry, effort, and stories woven into everyday life during that era. Stay curious, keep exploring the hidden histories around us, and I will see you next time with another fascinating story.